Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me share a quote with you. The great Les Brown once said, "You can't see the picture when you're in the frame." If you've felt stuck in your fitness, mindset, or life as a whole, head down to the link in the show notes and reach out to learn more about Project Endure Coaching so that we can help you step outside of the frame and bridge the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. We can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 152. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the state of Arizona, we have a very, very, very special guest, Erik Hultquist. Erik, how are you, man?
Good. How are you? It's good to be back. Thanks for the invite.
Of course, man. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And for people who don't know who you are, I think they will quickly understand why I wanted to have you share your story and talk about some specific topics on the podcast. But before we get there, how would you introduce yourself to people who don't know who you are?
Well, I'm an amputee, so I'm missing one of my legs. That's probably the first thing you would notice if you saw me out in public. I'm an athlete. I'm a triathlete. I swim, bike, run all over the world. I've been doing it for the last 5 years, actually 7 or 8 years total, but the last 5 years competitively after I lost my leg. I took it up originally when my father had a stroke at the finish line of a triathlon right as I was graduating high school when I was 18. I wasn't an athlete at all. I had played a bunch of sports in high school, but I wasn't really serious about pursuing athleticism after high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do or the direction that I was going. And my dad came home one day, said he was going to do a triathlon in our hometown. This was in Chicago, where I grew up. And so he went and did the local triathlon. And right at the finish line, he had a stroke. And he's still alive today. But I was young, I was 18, and it took a big toll on me. And it made me pause in life. And I said, what do I want to do? I want to go do a triathlon for my dad. So the next year, I went and did the same triathlon that he did locally in town, and I completed it and raised a bunch of money for him and the National Stroke Association. He was there to see it. But triathlon wasn't really a competitive thing that I wanted to pursue. It was more just in my dad's name, and I wanted to do it for him that year. So fast forward, I ended up moving to Arizona a couple of years later to pursue other things, school, jobs. And I was out here for about 2 or 3 years, and I was working for one of the electric scooter companies, and I was riding a scooter home one day in Scottsdale here in Arizona, and I was stopped on a street corner waiting to cross the street, and all of a sudden I heard a big loud explosion in front of me. Two cars collided at the intersection that I was waiting to cross, and one of the cars hit me on the sidewalk. And when I looked down, my right leg was gone. So I lost my leg, and in the hospital, my mom and my doctors and everybody asked me, what do I want to do? And I said, I want to do a triathlon again. That's how I knew how to get past trauma. That's how I knew how to keep going from my dad's story. And I just used it for myself and said, this is how I'm going to get through recovery is I'm going to work towards a triathlon. So I competed and completed my sprint triathlon first after my leg 9 months later in September, lost the leg in January. And from there, it just took off. It was what I wanted to do. I heard about the Paralympics. I heard that I can do this competitively with other people who are missing their legs. And so it really was just a snowball effect. And the last 5 years, I've been traveling the world and trying to make it to the Paralympics.
Wow. We have a lot to unpack, and I appreciate that introduction because we're going to get right into it. And
Definitely.
I ask guests, right, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself? Just to be clear, would this be that for you?
Yeah, I think it would definitely. I didn't get to choose the leg. And I think the thing that helped me get over it right away is I knew on that street corner what the outcome was going to be. And so even though I didn't get to choose it, it wasn't my doing that caused it or anything like that. I think I knew right there that day that hey, life is going to change from this moment on and I all I can do is react and move forward in the direction that is going to be best for me as opposed to being sad about it or wondering why or being upset that I didn't cause it. I'm frustrated. I'm never going to move past this. How is life going to go on? So yeah, it's something that I couldn't control. It's an outcome that I just had to accept. And I think the only thing that helped is I just accepted it that day and moved on immediately.
So there are people listening to this podcast who have been through hard things, who will be going through hard things at some point in the future. And not everyone will respond like that. Not everyone will avoid the victim mentality. Not everyone will choose to move forward like that. What is it about you or your upbringing or your life to that point that allowed you to come to that conclusion so quickly?
I think, my dad's story had helped. I had watched him kind of go through that same situation, and, his really affected him a lot differently. A stroke is a big deal, and it's really hard to come back from that. And I think I tried to always be that character in his life that was like, hey, let's keep going. And that's why I did the triathlon for him was to kind of show him that, I even if you can't do another triathlon, I'm gonna do one for you, and you can live vicariously through me, and we can go through this together. But you know, these big life altering traumatic situations where you have to accept the outcome or the situation sometimes are easier for me to accept and move on from than the little normal everyday life situations that we all go through, that are harder to accept sometimes because you don't know what the right decision is. You struggle going back and forth with what's best for me, what's best for the outcome. But I'm learning, because I've been able to accept these big traumatic situations that hey, I can deal with the little ones too, and I think we all can.
That's so powerful, so relatable. And it makes me wonder, is your life better off in any way without the leg?
Absolutely. Not only is my life better off, but I am a much better athlete, person, human being, wholehearted. Just grateful to be alive because of the experience. But no, I mean, as an athlete, my first triathlon before I lost my leg, if you saw the times I do sprint triathlons today, the shorter ones, and that's the triathlon that I originally did before I lost my leg. So if you were to go back and look at the times from that first triathlon with two legs versus my times today, it's quite the incredible difference. So I don't think the leg has slowed me down in any area of life. And if anything, it has made me so much more grateful to be here today. And that's something that I'm learning, every day just to reflect on that and to remind myself how grateful I am to be alive. And it's kind of hard to do that sometimes. When you go through a near death experience or a traumatic experience that's life altering, a lot of the times you come out just so grateful and on top of the world. And after my leg, I remember getting out of the hospital and waking up in the hospital first and then getting out of the hospital and then going home to recover and waiting for my first prosthetic leg. And yes, there were moments of what ifs and how am I going to make this through, but for the most part, I was just so excited and so grateful to be alive because I seriously could have died on the corner that day, and I knew that. And it was something that I was scared of that day, was, dying and bleeding out. And I asked the paramedics, "Hey, am I going to die here today?" And when I went to sleep at the hospital, I was awake through the whole experience. But when I did finally go into shock at the hospital and go into surgery, I think I was pretty scared that I wasn't going to wake up from that. So when I finally did wake up, there was nothing, the loss of a leg was nothing to me because I was awake again and I was alive. And from that point on, I was just so excited to see how I could recover from this and where I could take life and the things that I could do. And I stayed that way for quite a while, as we all probably would, but there was a time probably a year later or so where that effect kind of fades off, and it's natural. But you start to forget how grateful you are, and you start to forget that feeling that you felt when you left the hospital or when you got your first prosthetic leg. And it's because, so much is going on, and you're trying to focus on the everyday and the goals that you have, and you're excited about the recovery and the progress you've made. But you still have to allow time to reflect on that and to just be so grateful because it truly is remarkable.
Yeah. And so years later, what do you do? How do you keep the gratitude in place when you recognize that it's fading? Are there things you do, practices you have?
Yeah, I mean, I have been scared to go back to that street corner for the last 5 years, and I think I've avoided it at all costs. Anytime I have an appointment or somewhere I have to go that leads me down that road, I always drive a different way, and it's been that way for the last few years. I've moved as far away as possible in town from that corner so I don't have to go back. And I've just got so caught up in my own pursuits and goals that I've kind of allowed it to be that way, and I haven't done the proper reflecting. And I'm still, it's only been 5 years. So, I spent the first year or so really reflecting on it, but then got carried away with progress and goals. And, I had a lot of stuff that I dealt with this last year that has just gravitated me back to that corner. And I've found myself the last few weeks going back and visiting. And it's a special feeling to go just sit there and realize what happened that day and realize that I'm still here and I'm still breathing and I'm standing and looking back at the past 5 years of progress I've made. I just don't think I've really reflected on all that, and it feels good to do that. So, I mean, anybody can do this with, a hard time that you went through 5, 10 years ago, that maybe you've just forgotten about, or maybe you've pushed to the side because you don't want to go back to that dark space. But I encourage you to allow yourself to go back there for a day and remember where you started, because it is truly powerful to look back at all the progress you've made and to appreciate where you've came from.
I could not agree more with all of that. And so from there, Eric, what are some of the things that someone who doesn't have an amputated leg, who hasn't gotten their first prosthetic, who hasn't, learned to walk again, what are some of the things that people don't realize about that process or were particularly hard or impactful for you?
It was quite a process, after the initial injury, I was only in the hospital for a couple days, believe it or not.
Hmm.
I got out of the hospital probably by day 3, and I did need about 3 months to recover because there was a lot of stitches, a lot of staples, a lot of surgery going on. I had to allow my leg to shrink enough to fit into a prosthetic leg, because after a surgery like that, it's so swollen that I couldn't even put a leg on to handle or to try out. So the first 3 months were rough. I laid in bed all day. I wondered. I read books about people who had gone through similar experiences. I started reaching out to people in the community who had gone through traumas like that and made it out. And I somewhere down the line, I got really excited. And I remember that day that they told me to come into the doctor to pick up my first leg. And it was so exciting. And I thought thought I was going to run out of the doctor's office on it and just get back to normal life. And unfortunately, there was a big learning curve. And I had to spend, after I picked up my leg that day, it took me a good couple months to really learn how to walk again. And I think it's more of a mental thing because you're scared. You don't know how it works. You're scared to put the pressure on it. You're scared to learn how to walk again. And eventually you kind of get over that fear because you want to do it. And so it was a little learning curve. I was on crutches for a few months. And eventually I just said, you know what? I got to fully commit to this. And I dropped the crutches, and it started out, being able to wear the leg 1 hour a day. And from there, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. After I could really start to walk again, I tried jogging. Running was the goal, but running in a normal walking leg is pretty difficult. You do need a certain type of running blade that is made for running to be able to run. So I didn't get one of those until about 6 months into my journey. And a lot of people don't know this, but with the prosthetics and the legs, this goes for, arms, any type of prosthetic device, with health insurance really covers your walking leg. They will allow you a leg to walk, and you can get replacement parts for it a certain amount a year, and you can replace your walking leg every few years. But anything other than that, with the running prostheses, the really cool running blades that you see out there, those are not covered by any insurance company. So that is all stuff that you have to do on your own if you want to pursue that. And I've been lucky enough to have all of my running prostheses donated to me. The first one my doctor's office gave me, once I kind of graduated from that beginner blade, I had a foundation, Wiggle Your Toes, give me the first Autobox specialized blade, and I used that for the next 2 or 3 years in my journey. And then just recently, I decided to switch to a brand new blade that works best for triathlon, which is the Oser blade, and that's the one that I'm wearing right now. So it's pretty incredible, the technology that they've come out with for some of this stuff, and I can't imagine where it goes in the next 10, 15, 20 years. You see the people with the double blades and the mechanical arms. And so honestly, I'm very excited about where it's going and the legs that I will have in the future with ankles and all sorts of running devices. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, that stuff isn't covered by insurance. And so I have a lot of friends who are doing some incredible work. Um, One of my friends, Kyle, is working with an organization that he set up so everybody can move, that is trying to get these running prostheses in place through insurance companies so people can get them, so people can try running. Because if you don't have one donated from an amputee or a foundation, you really don't have any shot at learning how to run properly. And when you do it on a walking leg, you really run the risk of either screwing up the prosthesis or screwing up your leg in so much pain that you won't be able to walk. So it's pretty incredible, and I've had a lot of support along the way that's helped with that.
Yeah. And so I've got one more question on this
Hmm.
specific area of life, and then we'll move into what you're pursuing. But, for me, I'm losing my sight. And
Yeah.
similar to you, I didn't choose this, right? But where I'm going with this is there are a lot of days where I don't think about it, right? I do. I drive, I read, I write, I go throughout my normal day. And then a week later, somebody throws a baseball at me and I'm like, oh wow, I can't see. I forgot about it, right? Do you ever go throughout a day and just forget almost that
I
you're
I do, and there's been days, where I'm in the shower and I'll go to step out of the shower and kind of go, I'll kind of lean towards walking on my foot and be like, oh, it's not there. So I mean, I think it's become so natural to me that, some days I don't notice it. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. And on that note, I just downloaded that app today, Be My Eyes, where you can help the blind people kind of figure things out throughout their day. I'm super excited for stuff like this, the technology. It's so cool how technology is influencing some of these disabilities to make it easier on our everyday lives.
I could not agree more. And I think two quick points. One is that we don't have to go through the hard things alone. And there are so many people that want to help, even though asking for help can feel like a burden sometimes. It truly isn't.
Totally.
And then the other point is just human beings are so adaptable and resilient. And I think you're a perfect testament to that, right? You can lose a limb and then excel and thrive more than you were before.
Hey, if I didn't have the community that I met when this all happened, I wouldn't have known about any of this. And I'm so grateful for that. Like I said, when I was laying in bed, uh, totally new to all of this, I had no idea any of this was even possible. I mean, I know we see cool videos of people, running on the prostheses and stuff like that, but I really had no idea that there's a whole community out there that helps each other and what the Paralympics stands for, and all of these athletes who have done incredible things since their injuries or traumas, or even since birth, the people who have gone through it their whole lives. And to just meet some of those people, listen to their stories, the books that I read at that time. And then, the biggest launch for me was going to some of these events that some of these foundations, like the Challenged Athletes Foundation, Team Catapult, Wiggle Your Toes. They hold events all year long. And I remember going to my first one a few months after I got my first prosthesis, and I didn't really know what to expect. I was just going to, meet some members of the community, and it was life changing. I mean, I was so inspired leaving that event that there is so many people out there doing incredible things despite the challenges that they face every single day. And it made me so inspired. So I mean, if you're ever feeling down about the situation that you're in, I promise there's a lot of people going through incredibly hard things every day and still thriving. And it's just about finding that community of people that are going through similar things that you are, and placing yourself there, and listening to other people's stories and using it to, build your own. It's pretty incredible.
And that's exactly why this podcast exists and why I'm so grateful for people like you who are so open about their stories, the struggles, and the strengths that they found through the struggle. And so, not only have you dealt with this hard thing, you've also done a lot of hard things on purpose. When you look back at your life this far, what's the hardest thing that you've chosen to pursue on purpose and why?
I will say triathlon is just about the hardest sport that you can pursue. And, I love it, and it's a part of me. It's in my blood now because of my dad and through my leg story. But to be honest, I didn't choose triathlon. It wasn't something that I said, I want to go do this super hard thing because it's something that I want to do. It was more through my dad's story and through my story that I really wanted to use it as a way to get past the trauma and through the recovery, and to make an impact on both of those things. But at the end of the day, I think through the last few years of taking it seriously and trying to be the best triathlete that I can be, to make it to the Paralympics, which is an incredibly hard task, I've learned, it takes a lot, and triathlon is just a hard sport. You have three sports combined: swimming, biking, and running. And if you want to be at the best level in all three of those combined, it probably takes the most training out of all sports combined, because, and I don't want to say that triathlon is harder than this sport or harder than this sport, but at the end of the day, you do have to be the best swimmer, the best biker, and the best runner all at the same time. And if you lack in any of those categories, it's going to throw your whole race off. So to be the best at all three of those is just a demanding task. I mean, you have to put in the training equally in all three. And I think a lot of us as triathletes usually start off having one strong sport, whether it be you swam in high school or college, and then you learn how to bike and run. Or some of us are just stronger cyclists because we have stronger legs. Or there's the natural runners who run marathons and 10Ks and 5Ks for fun, and then want to swim and bike. But somebody like me who didn't do any of it in their early life, and to just pick it all up at once. It's been a balancing act, and I've had to learn how to do all of them the best that I can possibly be. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that, even aside from training. You have to be totally committed to fitness and dialing your whole body in. There is no room for you know to let your body go in any way. It's been a lot of, and I'm young, so it's challenging to stay that committed, because there are times that I want to go out and have fun or have a few drinks or stay up late. But really, to be the best triathlete that I can be, I need 8 hours of sleep a night, and I know that, because if I don't get that 8 hours, I'm gonna wake up unrecovered, and if I go have a few drinks, it's gonna throw me off all week. So those are just some of the things that I've had to learn along the way and really commit myself to. If this is something that I want to do at the best level, and it's hard, but you got to go through those hard things to be the best athlete you can be. And it's definitely the hardest decision that I have ever made. And it's a decision that I have to make every single day. It's not a decision that I just make once that, hey, I want to go do this race. And I think a lot of people can get away with that. They can go, pick a goal, or pick, I want to go do an Ironman, and you can kind of get away with making it to the finish line and still having, a good time along the way, and not getting the sleep or the recovery or the nutrition, or not training quite as hard in all of the areas. And that's fine if that's what you want to be. But for my pursuit to really take this to the next level and to make the Paralympics, it's a decision that I have to make every single day and every minute to be the best athlete that I can be, and it's tough.
Mm. Greatness is a daily decision that requires a whole lot of sacrifice. Why the Paralympics? What is driving you to get there and to maintain this level of commitment and sacrifice?
Well, I like the speed over the long distance, and I think there will be a day where I do an Ironman, and I take up the long course stuff, and I have some fun with that, and it won't be quite as serious for me. It'll still be a lot of training, and it'll be hard. Those 8 to 12, 15-hour races are incredibly tough. I'm not taking anything away from that. But with the Paralympics and the Olympics as a whole, they're shorter races. They're typically about an hour long, and it's all out sprint. And that has just driven me to just get fast and to just see the progress. And it's you can see a lot of progress along the way, and I think that's really driven me, as I go back and look at the race that I did with two legs, and then the first race that I did with one leg, and now the racing that I'm doing today, to be able to see the 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes that I've cut down to is pretty incredible. And I think it's really just driven me to see how fast I can go. And I'm starting to get to the point where, I didn't think I could ever run this fast or bike this fast or swim this fast with two legs, let alone one. And so it's cool. And I think it's cool when people see me out there with two legs, really training hard and running fast and riding fast. And I think it inspires them to really appreciate that they have that speed inside of them too. And I did too when I had two legs. I just never really used it. But I think that progress has been pretty incredible. And to be able to be on a world stage at the highest level is just something that I probably never would have got that opportunity otherwise. Or maybe I would have, because maybe have the athlete inside of me. But I wouldn't have brought it out unless I really knew it was possible. And the Paralympics have done that for me. I've read so many stories, I've seen so many people do it, and it's hard. I'm not saying the Paralympics is any easier than making the Olympics, because it is tough, let me tell you. And it's a goal that you have to commit yourself to for years and years and years. But I think that commitment and that drive, and seeing a long-term finish line in my sight, is so much more exciting than putting myself out there for, a short-term goal or something like that. So to have this huge goal in the background, and then to have the smaller goals on the way, I need to do good at this race. I need to qualify. I need to gain the points. I need to bump my times down. I need to set myself up. But to have that huge goal to be on the world stage eventually has just really done it for me and really lit my fire.
Mm. So being on the world stage is an incredible platform. And before we talk more about that specific pursuit, I think it's also important to recognize that every single day, you, just like everybody else, is walking around with their own demons, their own battles, their own struggles, right? And one of the things that I think is so cool about your specific struggle, if you will, I'll put that in air quotes, is that it's very visible to other people, right? Everybody can see that. And I think that just it accentuates and it amplifies just how hardworking you are, how driven you are, how inspiring you already are, because now people can see the setback that you're dealing with. They can see you train through that. And that is so inspiring.
Yeah, and like I said, I go through the daily, daunting, challenging decisions and uh, things that we all go through, and sometimes those are the hardest things for me too. It's not making it through the day with my leg, or dealing with a leg injury, or just realizing that I have to go through this with a leg that's so hard for me. It's trying to be normal and trying to get through normal challenges that we all face with the leg on top. And I forget that myself sometimes. And in the winter when I'm wearing pants a lot, and people don't see that, I think a lot of the times I forget it too. And I've gone in for job interviews and different meetings with people and stuff where they don't even know. And I've learned to walk so good that when I do wear pants, some people don't even notice. And it's a kind of an honoring feeling to kind of hold that in sometimes, and to go act like I'm completely normal, like everybody else, and which I am, honestly. But that, secretly, that this is just a little bit harder for me, and not just harder, but there's things that I have to consider uh every day, all day, with my leg. And at the end of the day, when I take my leg off and look back on the day, and it appears normal, I think about all that stress that I put on my leg and how much harder it really was. And they do say that, amputees in general, we use somewhere around, it can be anywhere from 30 to 80% more energy just walking than walking with two legs. That's a pretty incredible statistic. And when you add swimming, biking, running, and everything else that I do on top of that, I'm using a lot of energy per day. And I think I forget about that too. So it's tough. And same with your disability and your eyesight. It's something that not a lot of people really notice unless you tell them, probably. And to that feeling of kind of knowing that, and you still going about the day just as anybody else would, but things are a little bit harder. It's pretty incredible. And I think we all have something that we deal with, whether it be physical or just a mental trauma that we're going through, or something we're holding inside that we're trying to work through. Not everybody sees the challenges that we face every day. And to just remember that yourself, and to use that to kind of get you through the day and be proud of yourself at the end of the day, I think is huge.
Yeah, and I think it's empowering. Maybe that's the word that's coming to mind for me, to know that there are these hard things that we're all dealing with as humans, and we
Yep.
make it through the day and we get to the next one and we give our best, and that's a good feeling. Um, Before we keep moving on, do people treat you differently when the leg is out and people can see it?
I get a lot of stares quite often, and I don't mind it. I like sharing my story. I found myself, I was going for a run the other day, and I was standing on a street corner waiting to cross the street, and I had my running blade on, and there was a guy standing next to me on a bicycle. And I looked over at him, and funny enough, there was actually an electric scooter on the corner too. And I looked over to him and I said, "Hey, you know how I lost my leg?" And he goes, "How?" And I said, "I was standing on one of those scooters, just like you and me are right now, on a corner like this." And so I think it's cool to, allow people to learn my story. And kids are one of the biggest. I'm like a superhero to kids, and I don't have to do anything. It's just the sight of the leg. So I don't mind it. I know a lot of people have different feelings about it, and that's totally okay. But I think it's empowering anytime you have something that not a lot of people know about, or they can obviously see. It's something that affects me all day, every day, and whether it be one of my harder leg days where I'm kind of limping around and people ask, what's going on, or it's just a day where I'm out running or biking like I always do, and they're amazed by it. So I don't mind sharing my story. I think it's powerful. I think a lot of people need to hear it, and I think it makes their day when they do hear it. And so yeah, I think if you have a story, uh go ahead and share it. Why not?
Yeah. I again couldn't agree more with that. And as we now refocus on the Paralympics and that pursuit, I'm sure that doesn't come without its ups and downs. And so tell us a little bit about the choppy ride, the roller coaster that is pursuing the Paralympics.
Yeah, it's been quite the road with a lot of forks in it. And the first one was COVID, definitely. I did that first triathlon after my leg, 9 months after my leg, which was in September 2019. And I was fired up after that. I said, I'm gonna go. That's right when I learned about the Paralympics, and I said, "Hey, I just did this triathlon. I'm gonna go try and do one of these real international qualifier races." And this was around the time Tokyo was coming up, the Tokyo Games. And so I thought, I did quite good in the first triathlon on one leg that I did. And, I'm a pretty motivated guy who thinks he can kind of do anything. And so I said, I'm going to try and make Tokyo. I'm going to this was around the time they had these qualifying races for Tokyo. And all you had to do was show up and win one or put down the right time, and you were on the Tokyo team. And so I thought it was something that maybe I could do. And I signed up for my first international race. I went through the whole process of getting classified with my leg, and I was all excited. I got the Team USA jersey. I was going to go really race against the best in the world. And I went to that race, which was in March of 2020. And that was the weekend that COVID came around. So I never got to race internationally for 2 years, which really did help my journey in the long run. And this goes back to that idea of when we think something's really, screwing things up, when actually it can be your benefit. I came back to Arizona. I met my mentor and my training partner that I train with every day now, Todd, and we just trained by ourselves all day, every day in Arizona. And it's really what built me into an athlete. And by the time I was ready to go race internationally, I obviously didn't qualify for Tokyo because I didn't have the points or the races to go from there. They kind of just picked the team that was ready in 2019 to send to the Tokyo 2021 games. So it was a setback for me, definitely, and I think I was a little disappointed and upset that I didn't get my shot to go to Tokyo, and I was a little frustrated. But I honestly just brushed it off, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna just go train. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to be ready when the time comes." And that time came the next couple years. I think I did my first international race in 2021 after Tokyo, or maybe 2022. And by then I knocked off a good 20 minutes from that first race that I did with my one leg. And from there, I think I was really inspired to take it to the next level. And I knew that all this training that I had just put in the last couple of years on my own, people weren't paying attention. Nobody knew about me yet. I was kind of the newbie. Nobody knew that I was going to start racing. And I came out of nowhere, and I got second at my first international race. I went on to get second at the national championships that year. And then I started traveling with Team USA all around the world for the next couple of years. In 2022, I did a European tour where I went to France, Switzerland, Spain, England. I went to Japan. I raced the World Championships in Abu Dhabi and got sixth in 2022. So I was really setting myself up to be the best I could be for Paris, because Paris became the new goal. And that was the next games, which are coming up here in 2024. And so I was kind of in line, ready to qualify for Paris. And I think a lot of people saw it. And I was kind of getting excited and training the most that I could and getting the right coaches. I got my first professional coach that year that I did all the travel. He was a local pro here in Arizona, and he was the first real professional coach that I ever worked with. And I think I'm somebody who struggles with coaching sometimes and allowing somebody to tell me what I'm supposed to do. And it really benefited me, and allowing myself to really listen to somebody and for them to guide me in the right direction was a huge help for me, as well as finding mentors and people to give me the right advice, and training with, and local community groups to train with along the way. That has all helped me in my own journey. But then out of nowhere, last year, another new guy came along, and it's been a three-person battle this last year or so, and they only take the top two Americans to the games. This goes for the Olympics and the Paralympics. They take the top two men and the top two women. And for the Paralympics, per category, they take the top two men and the top two women. So for a while, I had set myself up to be that number two spot. And when the other new guy came along, it was like, okay, now we got this is going to get competitive. And we're all friends. We're all around the same age. We all get along well. We all stay together when we travel. We all are on the start line together, and we know it's going to be a battle against each other. And we have that friendly battle. But at the end of the day, they're only going to take two of us to Paris this year. And so it's been tough, and it's put a lot of pressure on me. I think I went from, this is gonna be easy. I've put in all this work and I've trained hard enough, and that's enough. That's all I got to do is train hard enough, and I'll make it. But I think I learned sometime this last year or so that sometimes you can work hard and you can put in all of the training hours and do all of the right things, but there's sometimes there's just somebody better than you. And that's being an athlete. That's in any industry. Somebody can outwork you by far, and somebody can just have more talent than you. And I've had to kind of accept that. And move past and just say, hey, if I make it, if I have the right race at the qualifying races, then that's awesome. And I've put in all the work to get there, and I'll be proud of myself. But if they beat me on that day, and if I don't make it to Paris, I tried my hardest and I did everything I could, and I'm still proud of myself for all the progress that I've made. So that's been tough. I've been in two relationships the last 4 years on this journey as well. I think I've had to learn how to balance being a good partner and being an athlete at the same time, which has been hard for me to learn. I've had to deal with working and providing for myself, and being able to pay the bills, and being able to do it all at once. So that's difficult, because I'm training 20 to 25 hours a week to be the best athlete I can be. And if I need to work 40 hours on top of that, and then come home and give more hours to my partner, it's a balancing act, and it's difficult. And I think a lot of high performance athletes really struggle with some of these things, and it can affect you mentally. And I've been there where, I don't know if I can balance everything. And it goes back to that cup theory, where if all your cups are full and one of them's leaking or one of them's half full, you really struggle with holding them all together and keeping water in all of them. So I have really had to learn how to balance things. And this last year has been tough for me, and I didn't make it to some of the qualifying races that I needed to. Last year, I got bumped down to that third spot. The other two guys beat me in one of the first races of the year, which was fine. I had to accept that. But I trained the rest of the year as hard as I could. And I put in, 25-hour weeks, and I hired the best coach in the system, which he's an incredible guy and taught me so much. But I think sometime down the road, I just had to accept that, man, this is tough, and I'm not making it into the races that I need to get the points from. And I'm struggling in these other areas of life. I'm not working quite as much because I'm training so much. I'm not giving the amount of time that my partner deserves, and the she's not getting the full side of me. So a lot of this stuff really came unraveled last year, and I had to kind of put the pieces back together in the last few months, the last year, to figure out how I'm going to do this, if it's still something that I want to do. I had to take a couple steps back to see the bigger picture. And so now here we are, and we're in the Paris year, and we're coming up to the games, and I have one last shot left, and that is at a race in Florida in 2 weeks. And I haven't been training as hard as I have been the last few years. And I think I've accepted that because I have put water back into some of the other cups that have been leaking for the last couple of years. And so, and it feels good. I'm happy, and I'm gonna be proud of myself no matter what happens at this race. I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna try my hardest. I'm gonna race as hard as I can. I'm gonna give it one last shot. And if it doesn't work, then I will still be proud of all the progress I've made, and I will be much happier than being miserable trying to just put all the water in one cup to be as physically fit as I can be for this race. So I think, going out to all the high performance athletes or people who want to be the best in whatever industry they're in, this can be in business, this can be, pretty much in anything. Lawyers, doctors, they spend so much time putting into their craft or building a business. And I think sometimes it's easier to forget those other factors that go into life. And sometimes you just do need to take a step back and to say, hey, I need to water some other things here, and we'll come back around to it. And I think I'm really learning the balance, and that has been huge for me lately. So I'm still excited and getting ready for this race. And I've been training a little bit more as we're leading up to it. But the next Paralympics are in LA, and I have that in the back of my mind. And I've been the last few years, coaches have told me and mentors have told me that, hey, if Paris doesn't work out, LA is coming in 4 years. And I've been so motivated to make it to Paris that I haven't even wanted to hear that. The minute they say LA, it's like, okay, gone out of my mind. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to think about that far into the future. But now that I've taken this big step back and really looked at things and really reflected on the progress that I've made and been grateful to, just be alive and be doing this and to be at this level and to be where I'm at. And, I think I've kind of accepted that, hey, Paris would be awesome if I can make it and put in the work to get there, then that's sweet. But if I don't, LA is around the corner, and I'm young, and it's better to be patient than to be impatient, because that can be dangerous sometimes. And it's better to take that step back and really just be patient about things, especially, at the age that I'm at. And I think a lot of us think that we're so old and that we're running out of time and that we got to do all these things so quickly. But at the end of the day, a lot of us are young, and there's a lot of time left to do everything that we want to do. And so I encourage you to just take a little step back if you're feeling flustered, if you're getting miserable, if you're not balancing things properly, and just accept some balance and look forward to the future. There's a lot of time left.
There's so much wisdom in the last few minutes of what you said. And I have a
It's a
couple
lot, man.
Oh man,
It's a lot to unpack.
it's so much. I feel like we probably need a few episodes to do it, but I have a couple thoughts that I'll share, and hopefully this all makes sense. But
Sure.
this crossed my mind at the beginning of the episode, and I've shared this on the podcast before, so I'll keep it short. But I want to say a little less than 10 years ago, timeline is, I would need to think on it, but I was in a car accident. My car flipped, rolled. It was one of those moments where I thought that I wasn't going to be here. Right. And people say time slows down. For me, it did. It felt like it was an hour. It was probably only 5 seconds. And I remember this deep sadness, just this pit in my stomach. I thought I was never going to see the people I loved ever again. And I can't describe that feeling with words, but it was the worst feeling I think I'd ever had. And the car rolled, dust settled. I realized I was alive. Someone helped me out of the car. I'm standing on the sidewalk looking at this car that is wrecked, and I'm completely fine. And I had never felt so good in my entire life, right? So good. And I wish I could bottle that up and just open that mason jar and smell it every morning. But you're right, that feeling fades over time. And
Does.
and where I'm going with this is balance, right? In that moment, nothing else mattered, right? What was in my bank account didn't matter. What my
Yeah.
fitness was didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the fact that I was alive and I had another chance to see the people that I cared about and loved. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of that when things are going well, when, we're trying to perform at a high level, right? We have all these things we want, and those cups can overflow and things can be out of whack, and we lose sight of what's truly important. And I mean, I'm an offender, right? Like that happens to me all the time. But it's a good reminder that there are things more important than just the performance, the professional pursuits, the athletic endeavors, right? There are things that matter more.
Yeah, I think we can all say that there are a lot of different areas that we want to pursue and be the best at. And, we oftentimes just get so caught up in one, and we take it so seriously and we really dive headfirst into that. And that's okay. That's how you be the best, or that's how you really get ahead in that area. But to really take that step back, and I'm guilty of it too. After my leg, I took up triathlons, and it was just, I felt amazing, and I felt like I had life back, and I was so grateful to be here. And I was, just swimming, biking, running every single day because it's what I wanted to do. And I was alive and I was going to do that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of other areas of life, and I think that's something that I've had to learn. And I just went back and got my first full-time job since my injury, and I'm completely diving headfirst into a brand new industry that I know nothing about. And it's aviation. I'm working for a private jet company because I've always wanted to be a pilot. And so I think, that's something that I forgot about after my leg. And so now that I'm doing all this reflecting, I'm kind of taking that step back and saying, hey, there's this other thing that I wanted to do too. And it's okay to start from the bottom there because I'm so young, and dive head first into it and see where it comes out. So I think there's so many areas of life that we all want to explore. And I encourage you to just kind of move in different directions and still stay committed to the things that you really want most, but to not be scared to explore those things. And, getting a job was something that I needed to do because I wasn't balancing things properly last year, and I was training too much, and I wasn't, able to provide for myself or pay the bills. And so I had to go do it. And this is something else that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit. Was I think a lot of people hear my story and think that because I was on the corner and the injury was no fault of my own and I lost my leg, and it's such a big deal that, I have this huge settlement, and that I'm completely scot free for the rest of my life, and there's nothing that I have to do anymore, and that I'm just going to live, the rest of my life on this settlement money. And it's really, it's not true. And this is a little debate for all the lawyers out there, but in my situation, two cars collided at the intersection that I was standing at. And I was a pedestrian on the side of the road. And yes, one of the drivers was at fault for making the wrong left turn, and the other driver hit me. So there are insurance policies that take care of when you injure somebody like a pedestrian. But, personal people's insurance policies only cover a maximum amount, what you sign up for. You can't ask the insurance company for anything more than that amount. That is the maximum insurance policy that the person signed up for. So the insurance policy is not liable to pay you anything past that max policy. And then if you wanted to go after or sue the person at fault for the accident, you can if they have any assets to claim. But if the person does not have the assets or the amount of money that you think a leg is worth. You can't take somebody's house, you can't take their car. That's judgment proof. So at the end of the day, whatever the insurance policy provides for you, that's really all you get, unless the person has anything else to give. And I think it's something that I want to kind of dive more into later on in my life, is how can we change this? How can we, I don't think it's very right that, somebody can lose a leg, or like you're saying with your car crash, who's responsible in a situation like that? And it's something that I'm thinking about, moving into and trying to change. So there's one for all the lawyers out there. But yeah, totally, man.
That's an interesting topic, one that we've never talked about on the podcast before.
Yeah.
And I would be so interested to see, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, is is Erik a lawyer? Is Erik in the field of law, making change? And I wouldn't be surprised if you were, to be honest.
There's a lot of changes out there that I want to dive into, whether it be disability or, pedestrian safety after an accident like this. And I'm young enough, and I realize that, triathlon will always be in my blood and soul, and I'm going to give my all to it these next few years, whether it be Paris, LA, Ironmans, whatever I move into with triathlon, or, coaching maybe. But there's so many areas of life out there that I will explore, and yeah, I encourage you all to do the same thing, because life is too short to leave anything untouched.
Ooh, that's a good line right there. So Erik, we've got two more questions. I'll give them to you
Sure.
one at a time. So first, this is the Project Endure podcast. When you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
I just think going through whatever you got to go through to just do whatever you want to do. I mean, you got to be happy. You got to stay positive about things. I mean, life is too short to be miserable and to be negative all the time. And if you're constantly finding yourself there, there's some changes you probably have to make. But to do anything great in life, you have to endure. And there are going to be so many hard days. And if you're going through hell, you just got to keep going. And that is truly enduring. And it can be in sport, it can be in professional, work life balances, it can be in different industries. But, there are always going to be hard things that you have to deal with day in and day out, week in and week out, over months, over years, and you just got to keep pushing. And whether you're at the bottom missing a leg and trying to walk again, or whether you're just trying to make it through today with a big project that you're working on, you got to go through it, and you got to see what's on the other side, because if you don't, you're going to stay in the exact same spot that you are. I heard a quote the other day that really moved me, and it says, the best decision you can make in any circumstance is the right one. The next best decision that you can make in that circumstance is the wrong one. The worst decision that you can make in any circumstance is none. And so to just sit there and to not go through things because they're so hard and you can't endure them is never the right decision. You should always put yourself through it.
And that's so spot on. And the other thing I'll just go back to, which you said earlier in this conversation, is that at the end of that, at the end of enduring something, you might not get the outcome that you wanted, but you can still be proud of the way that you walked through it.
Yeah. There's no goal uh that's big enough that you're just going to automatically make, and everything takes a lot of hard work to get there, and sometimes you will just come up short. I mean, that is just how it is. Definitely in sport, I mean, there's so many people working and training. You're not going to be better than all of them. The best never stays the best for long. I mean, they always come down at some point, and somebody is the next up, and somebody else is the best at some point. And that goes for anything, You can be the boss one day, and then someday another boss gets hired. So, whatever goal you have, it's probably not big enough. You can probably do it. But if you don't make it quite to the level that you were hoping for, you're still going to end up pretty close to it. What's that quote? If you shoot for the moon, you end up among the stars. So, I mean, as long as you're working towards something great, you're going to move in that direction. And whether it be that one certain great thing or all of the great things that you accomplish along the way, I think it's worth it to go for it.
Yeah, I would agree. And so to wrap things up, I'll ask you my favorite question. And this is my favorite question because there are people listening to this podcast who are just going through some stuff, maybe rock bottom type stuff, maybe just a hard, regular day kind of stuff. But regardless, someone out there is struggling with something and you get a chance to speak directly to them. What would you say?
Say I'm going through it too. I'd say we all are. None of us have it all figured out at the end of the day. And I think that goes for all of your biggest influences, all of the people that you look up to. They all have hard days. They all think that they're not good enough, and they all, want to be better than where they are now. We all want to be better, and we all want things to just be perfect all the time, but it's just not going to be. And I've dealt with so many things, so many ups, downs over the years, and this feeling of, incredible greatness to be alive and just, being happy for life. But, there are so many days where I'm like, man, this sucks. How am I going to get through today? Like, I just feel like I'm at the bottom right now, and I just want to move so much faster. And I guess I would just encourage them to be happy that you're alive. You're breathing, you're living, you got the chance to fix it. You got, the only person that can really keep moving and keep working towards fixing it is you. And the second is to, just never give up and to just keep moving in that direction, because you never know what can change in one single day. And I've learned that. And yeah, I mean, there's no point in dwelling over it for a long period of time, because life moves so quickly. And if you just sit there and dwell on the bad situations, you're not going to make any progress. And sometimes it does take a total step back or a total reset. And I've done that so many times. And I think I forget how much I love doing that. I think a lot of us get so stuck on the path that we're on, that we need to stay on that exact path. And if anything, falls off of that path, we freak out, and, we're scared to change anything. But, if you feel like you're at rock bottom right now, what do you have to lose? Just take a total reset, dive into something new, do something completely different than what you're used to. Try switching things up. I mean, you never know what the outcome could be. So just the worst decision you can make is nothing.
So powerful. So Erik, before we wrap things up, and I tell people where to follow along with your journey, is there anything else you'd like to share that we didn't get to in the podcast?
No, I think we covered a lot, man. It's quite the journey that I'm on, and there's so much more that I want to do. So I just encourage everybody to just experience the most that they can. Be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for what you've gone through. We all have big traumas and things that we've dealt with in our life. It may not be missing a leg. It may not be losing your vision. It may be something a little more simple that not quite all of us can relate to, but we all have that gift of overcoming something and enduring through it. And I think at the end of the day, you just got to keep working towards your goals and set big ones. And if you don't make it quite to that big one, you'll hit a lot of little ones along the way.
Very well said. Well, Erik, I appreciate you so much. And I know the people listening did as well. So if they'd like to follow along with your journey or connect with you, where's the best place for people to do that?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram for now. It's Erik, Try, Erik, Erik, and TY. I'll be posting there a lot more lately. I'm trying to get a lot more stuff going. And I'll probably get a YouTube going too, which is just Erik Ty, ERIK, TYY. So give me a follow. I'm trying to get on TikTok too, but I'm not quite there yet. So maybe if you can help me out with that, shoot me a message.
There we go. Well, Erik, I appreciate you, who you are, what you're about, how hard you work. And I can't wait to see what life has in store for you. So thank you, man.
Thanks, Joe. Always good to be here.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, Go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Endure Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.